My name's Martha Ciana, and do I say the date?
Yeah.
It is July 22nd, 2013. And I have lived in Port Hope since I was 3.5 years old. My parents moved here when I was that old. And they opened a business in Port Hope called, at the time, the Carlisle Inn, which became a hotel and restaurant on John Street. And we lived on the second floor, and we lived there for about a year or 2 years, and then my parents bought the Hillendale Manor where we moved, and we lived in there until we were, I think I was 16. We moved across the street for 2 years, turned the house into a bed and breakfast, moved back into the house, and my brother and I lived there till we were grown up. I went away, moved, and did all those things that you do after high school. Came back to Port Hope as a registered massage therapist, and moved in and bought a building on John Street, and that's where I live today. So I live at 20 and 22 John Street, which is the old Square Boy Pizza building, and originally was a jewelry store, I believe. And we run the massage therapy office down below, and I live up above with my family. I remember that what is now the Flourish clothing store was originally a gentleman's formal dress store, and they had a big neon sign with like a top hat and cane out front.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the original Furby house was much further up the street in the original Furby house building where Dr. Furby lived. I remember Dr. Benson's house when Dr. Benson was still a practicing doctor in it, and it's now it's a real estate agent's house. What else do I remember? I remember Horner's Crafts is where Dreamers now is, and Horner's Crafts was like the most amazing craft store. They had everything. I don't think craft stores like this exist anymore, unfortunately, because of Michael's and Walmart. But they had everything from classes in the far back, and you could go in and there was like beading classes, sewing classes for adults, little arts and craft things for children in the summertime, like summer camps. They carried every crafting product from Fimo to yarn to cross stitching, and like you name it, they had it. It was amazing. You like would buy doll kits there. I really missed that store. That was a very cool store. And then the photography place was around the corner from there, back when people still had film developed.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the Capitol Theater before it was renovated. And I remember doing some of the first, I was one of the original Capitol Theater kids, because we had a Capitol Club, and then we were the Capitol Kids. And we had the first meetings for renovating the Capitol Theater actually in the back of my parents' restaurant, in the banquet room. And I remember we made these paper fans and sold them to people for $2 when we started running the first movie Toonie nights, because there was absolutely no air conditioning and people were just sweltering. We would like give them old-fashioned fans to fan themselves with so they wouldn't die in the theater.
That's good. We have one of those, and actually, so it's nice to have the backstory.
Oh really? Oh man, they were a really cool idea, because we were like, what are we going to do to get people into the theater? So yeah, that was a really neat idea. I'm so glad people still have those. Originally met in Toronto when my dad was financing for his first restaurant. My mom was the woman at the CIBC doing his paperwork.
Oh, okay.
So they met there, and so they together ended up working at his first restaurant in Toronto called the Fair Exchange, and then they later sold that restaurant and moved to Baileyborough, where they renovated a church and opened their second restaurant called the Park Hill Cafe in Peterborough, which was originally on Park Hill Avenue. It's now called the Park Hill on Hunter because they moved the restaurant to Hunter Street. After a number of years of doing this, my parents were really successful, but they realized that renting the location of their restaurant was only ever going to get them so much money. So they decided that the best thing they could do was to own the building and eventually, own the building, and then the restaurant would eventually make more money and you'd expand. So they looked at Peterborough, Kingston, London, and there was nothing that they could find they wanted. And backstory a little bit further, my dad grew up in Toronto but would come out to Garden Hill to the family cottage, and his parents had since retired to Garden Hill. So my mom and dad would often come to Port Hope, go antiquing, and go back to Garden Hill and show me, the granddaughter, off to his parents. And so my father had many memories of Port Hope, and that building was the original Port Hope City Dairy. So as a little boy, he used to come into Port Hope. As a big treat, they would go get ice cream and sit on the stairs at the City Dairy. So coming through town one day, he's like, oh, you know what would be the best building ever for a restaurant would be the old City Dairy where I used to get ice cream. And sure enough, they went through town one day on their antique trips, and the building was for sale. At the time, it was an apartment building, and they bought it in under 22 hours. They actually scooped it from a developer who was going to buy it. They knew was putting an offer in on the Monday, and they contacted their lawyer and contacted the real estate agent, and the whole thing was signed and done by Sunday. So the guy went on Monday to put an offer in, and the deal was closed. It was done. And so then they had to go back, sell their restaurant in Peterborough, sell their church in Baileyborough, and they renovated, and we moved in, and then we've been here ever since. And they still run. They've been trying numerous times to sell that restaurant, and they've partially sold it twice, but they keep getting it back. So we're now running it for the third time, back under the name of Carlisle Inn and Bistro.
Yeah.
I don't remember as much about the manufacturing, actually. Because I lived on John Street, which is basically within the downtown core, most of the people I knew all worked in the downtown core. So most of my memories of people being employed were all self-employed people. So I remember like Blake Holton, and I've grown up knowing Dave Watson, and Victor's no longer here, but he was a food caterer on John Street. I remember when Gilmer's was actually very brief. When I was here, Gilmer's was moving up to its big location, but I actually remember when it was on John Street. Value Mart, the second Value Mart that used to be downtown, that's now Lakeland Place. Canadian Tire. I remember a lot about Canadian Tire downtown because my mom was in there every single day when we owned the restaurant. They actually gave her a special, like, a commemorative award because she was in there every single day. It's ridiculous.
That's funny.
Yeah. Like, we need supplies for the restaurant, you know?
Yeah.
Light bulb breaks, batteries. That was where you went, right?
Yeah.
I miss Turk's because where Black Beans now is, what previously was the Wedge, and before that it was a great old-fashioned diner-style restaurant called Turk's. And you either went to Turk's or you went to Dimitri's, and before Dimitri's it was Stippy's, and before that it was the old Olympia, which was again another version of Rail Side, like Greasy Spoon, good breakfast, you know, burgers, chips, all that kind of stuff. But Turk's had a long, low bar, and they had an old milkshake machine, they had the original stools, old booths, like really old school. And of course they had like the glass displays where you could see like the jello and rice pudding that you could order. Like really old school. I remember that. What else used to be downtown? And I remember the old, where Mad Monkey is now, used to be a store called Griffin's or Alabaster, and then before that it was Gothic Splendor? Sorry, it was Gothic Splendor, I think. And they sold all sorts of neat robes and crafty, witchy items, you know, spiritual stuff, that kind of thing. And I remember it was so beautiful because the front entrance, it had the big glass windows similar to Flourish, and it had the tiles going up the front, but it was really badly damaged in the fire that we had downtown. And that's mostly what I remember. But some things, like Smith Creek's Antiques has been there since time immemorial, and Antiques on Queen was another antique store, and it's always been there, as far as I can remember. Well, I was very fortunate. My parents had purchased the building because it came up for sale when Square Boy Pizza still owned it, and there was an opportunity to renovate the upstairs apartment and really improve it. So they did that. They had someone renting for a while, and then that person left upstairs, and Square Boy Pizza then, Angram, who owned it, decided, I guess in the middle of the night, he'd had enough of the chain of Square Boys and just up and left in the middle of the night, stoves, everything gone. So my dad was realizing, well, we need to renovate the building no matter what we do. We can renovate and sell it, or our daughter recently graduated from massage therapy, might want to open a clinic. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I had worked at many places. I was concurrent, like at the same time, working St. Anne's, Nirvana, Hillcrest, and out of my house in a place over in Coburg, because when you first start in massage therapy, you'll basically work anywhere that you can sort of get people underneath your hands to get experience. And I was first at Nirvana, left there, because they're really nice, but just wasn't the type of massage I wanted to do. I stayed at St. Anne's a little while longer, but again, I just didn't like spa work because I couldn't see any change happening over time with my people. And the clinic I was at in Coburg, I liked the clinical atmosphere, but it was a horrible, horrible owner. And I really didn't like working with her. So I decided at that point, I had this amazing opportunity to, go out on a limb. I thought, I do want to run my own office, whatever that may be. So when I made that decision, I left the clinic in Coburg and worked at Hillcrest full-time as one of their spa people, but it was different because I could walk to work
Yeah.
because I lived so close. I lived around the corner at that time. I lived on Trafalgar Street, so I was literally 100, not even 50 feet away from the house. So I would work there. I would do some people out of my house, and then I'd go back to Hillcrest. And then when my office opened, Hillcrest was run by an amazing woman named, or still owned by her, Robin Dines. And she and the spa manager realized that my office would not compete with any of the clientele at Hillcrest, because Hillcrest clientele all came in from Toronto and they had no day spa.
Yeah.
And so they were all overnight guests, and I had a very clinical massage therapy practice, so they let me do both at the same time. They were so wonderful. I would book like 2 people in the morning at Hillcrest, and I'd work 2 people at my office, and then I would walk back up the hill and finish the evening at Hillcrest. And I did that for a year and a half. And as I got more and more busy at my own office, it was really picking up. I realized I hit my breaking point where was basically 50% at Hillcrest and 50% at my office. And I realized, I'll never get bigger at my office where I make more money if I'm still at Hillcrest. And so I made the decision to leave there when they announced that they were going to be closing in that January. So I stayed on until January with them and said goodbye to that lovely building. It was such a fun place to work. It's unfortunate that it just couldn't last. And I've been down at my place ever since. In our office we have 3 treatment rooms, so there's one for myself. We rent the middle room to a second massage therapist, and the back room at the moment is shared by a psychologist and a naturopathic doctor. And when my husband and I were getting married, the year we got married in 2010, we decided to buy the building early in the year together, and then we've been living there ever since.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, it's really nice. Everyone should live downtown. And since we've done that, a really interesting trend is a lot of downtown store owners have moved in above their stores. So Julie from Gould's has always been upstairs. Robin Whale from Whale Chiropractic lives up above his. But now the owners of Hinchcliffe and Lee live upstairs. Sandy and John Campbell live above their clothing store, Campbell Company. Myself, Joyce and Duncan live up above one of the buildings they own. They run Flourish, but they also live up above, next to us, above Atomic Roasters and Mercury Chocolates. Sammy from Boulai Taster Thai lives up above hers. And I think there's more, but I can't remember them all. There's a lot of people who live downtown, and it's kind of fun because we all live and work in the downtown core, so a huge sort of little community has developed.